I did my project on Raphael, the great Renaissance painter and artist. So let's get started. Start off Raphael, of course, that's the self-portrait of what he looks like. He was born on April 6, 1483, and he also died on April 6th, but on 1520. And his actual date of birth is somewhat disputed, but most people agree that he was born on April 6th. So a little biography of what his life was like. Raphael Sanzio da Urbino is his name. He was an Italian artist that lived during the High Renaissance art period. He was orphaned at age 11 and was taken in by his uncle, who was a priest, and he kind of served under his uncle. And while his father was still alive, he used to work in his father's workshop and learn from him, and his father became a big influence on his painting and art making. And he specializes in drawings, paintings, printmaking, and architecture, so he really does basically anything with art. And one of the things he's known for is his clarity and form in expressing the beauty in humans. Why I selected Raphael? Because he was a great artist, first and foremost, and because when I did the criticizing paper, I criticized the School of Athens, which he did, and also Raphael's the name of a Ninja Turtle, and that's a TV show I used to watch, and that's the Ninja Turtle right there. All right, the time period of art that he was in, he belongs in the High Renaissance art period, and the art of this period reflected a renewed sense of the classical tradition. And the painting here I have is the School of Athens, and the painting of School of Athens has to do with kind of paying homage to great religious figures, great philosophers, great mathematicians, great scientists, people who made our society better. You can see it's just wonderfully done, and this is actually done at the Vatican. And again, this is what I did my art criticism paper on. Or in the mediums that he uses. Raphael had experience in many mediums growing up. He would, when he first grew up, he would usually focus on drawings. He would draw himself. He'd draw other people. He would just draw a lot because it was an inexpensive thing to do. You could do it on the move. And then just some of his mediums included oil, stone, and glass. But he really, since he did all kinds of art, he really had all kinds of mediums also. Oh, and that's also let's see, can I go back? Okay, yeah, and that's also a self-portrait of himself that he drew at a young age. And his father actually took a great kind of liking and was really impressed with him when he would do stuff like that. And he was a great help to his father when his father was alive. Influences, yeah, like I just said, Raphael's father played a big influence in his art due to the fact that his dad was an artist who taught Raphael much of what he knew. Raphael would regularly manage his father's workshop and continue to learn from him. And since his father was also a really famous and revered artist, it was just great to learn from him, and that's how he learned so much of his kind of artistic technique. And after his father died, he would kind of live nomadically and spent much of his life in Florence. And so Florence also had a big role in kind of influencing the type of art he did. He loved Florence. He just did a lot of artwork in Florence also. Although he lived in like a nomad, Raphael spent most of his time in Florence. He was very fond of Florence and had a connection with the city, and he contributed to Florentine art. And there's what Florence looks like modern day. It did not look like that during the time exactly, but Florence was a beautiful city at the time, and many of the great artists at that time would spend time working together, collaborating, and that was just kind of the hub where Renaissance art was made, and it is located in Italy. Notable works of Raphael is the School of Athens, again with the art piece I criticized, and you can see the picture that's on the right. I think in the middle are Aristotle and Plato, and around them are just great philosophers and thinkers talking to each other. Transfiguration, which will be on the next slide. The Sistine Madonna, also on the other slide, and the Triumph of Galatea. And those are all on the next slide. I'll show that. So right here is Transfiguration. As you can see, it kind of shows Christ during the resurrection. This is probably one of his most famous paintings, and it was displayed at his funeral also. And then the Sistine Madonna is right here, and it displays Mary with baby Jesus, and a lot of his paintings had to do with biblical kind of scenarios and stuff like that. And the last one would be, let me get this pronunciation right, the Triumph of Galatea, and that's to the right, bottom right. And so, yeah, it's another one of his great art pieces. He really, as you can see in all of his art pieces, they all include humans, scantily clad, and it focuses on the beauty of the human body and kind of enforces his humanist philosophy and his worldview. When it comes to Raphael's success, he was pretty successful. He was pretty well known, and he acquired a good amount of wealth throughout his life because he would be painting for the Sistine Chapel. He was great friends with people in authority. Like he was great friends with popes and just powerful people, and that kind of ensured that he would be in the kind of ruling class. And yeah, and he was also known for his art. So he also had a big name, and his name also would be spread among people like Michelangelo and Leonardo and other famous Renaissance artists. He was in the likes of Michelangelo, Leonardo, obviously very prominent and very famous Renaissance artists, and so having a name like that also ensured him being known throughout, ensured kind of popularity, being liked among the people, and having just every time he came out with new art, he'd be sure people would recognize him and know who he was, which definitely kind of helped him sustain himself and even make a good bit of money. His role in the history of art, he'll always be remembered for his breathtaking revolutionary art that he's done in the Vatican and elsewhere in the Renaissance period. Most of his famous works were painted in Florentine, and he contributed to the Renaissance art period, which brought a renewal in humanist philosophy. And he's very important as a figure, as he's one of the most famous artists in existence. He was very prominent in the Renaissance art period, which was fundamental in art's history, and it's just very important that we recognize him as a whole and as the movement as a whole, and its importance just on us and the whole art community. There again is a picture of our portrait of Raphael. He died at a relatively young age, so there's no real going to be pictures of him being old per se. If I had to guess, I'd say he's somewhere around 20 when this painting happened. And some interesting facts about Raphael. He was he was born and he died on April 6th. They expected that he died from a fever. Another fun fact about Raphael is his father was a court painter, so he was a painter on the court. He was like for a duke, I think, and his father was also very well connected, very respected, and so I think that's also how he kind of worked his way up so fast in the community, is because his father played a big role. He was a great artist. He had friends in high places, which really helped at that time. Raphael was not kind of a let's say he liked the women. Raphael would regularly have affairs with women. He never could be really tied down, especially with his lifestyle where he's moving all over the place. He would, sleep with many women. His most prominent lover was a baker's daughter named Margherita Ludi, and she was a self-described, beautiful woman, and it's just funny that she was a baker's daughter because, the class difference between the two. And he had a rivalry with Michelangelo, who's also, a Renaissance painter and artist. And so there's some interesting facts about Raphael. And there's my works cited.